Thank you for inviting us to share some of our thinking and best practices on creating a message and being influential in your communications. As Deborah introduced us, I'm Bob Morales. Anna Bajan and Roxana Janka are joining me today in our presentation.
Great. I'll share our screen.
Here's some of the topics we will cover. This is kind of what we did during the presentation. We'll provide you tools to use in your own work if you find what we share with you helpful today. When the pandemic hit, leadership began planning for the impact they knew it would have on their 80+ centers, 2,600 employees, 23,000 students in California. As you know, school closed on March 13th, but if instead of leaving students in the lurch, Learn for Life quickly transitioned to distance learning. In tandem, we launched a comprehensive communications plan to educate key audiences about our efforts to support students. Within days, we began distributing meals, baby supplies, laptops, hotspots. Many students continued completing coursework without interruption, and some students earned their final credits to graduate high school during that first week. Next is how we responded to the pandemic. First, we created communications goals. Our communications goals were to establish open lines of communications to students and families to provide needed resources, keeping them informed and inspired to move to distance learning. We leveraged moments to reinforce importance of alternative school models and highlight the distinct advantages over traditional factory-style educational system. We created a message strategy to internal and external audiences. We generated a steady stream of information, news, resources, and perspectives distributed through multiple channels. We ensured all messaging reinforced remote work and distance learning and abstained from using terms like closed or closure to differentiate our response from traditional schools. External affairs message strategy to legislators emphasized that our student stories. For example, I identified student legislators and highlighted their stories to my representatives by saying, my school continues to stay open, my teachers continue to stay in touch, my learning is continuing, and I have access to resources, and my center is fully operational.
So a big part of our internal and external communication strategy was to really speak to our audiences according to what they cared most about. So we knew our teachers and staff, they wanted guidance and resources to do their job, to keep students engaged, but they also had their own mental health and social emotional needs that we wanted to support. Partners, whether that's our workforce partners, community service providers, they wanted to understand what kind of interruptions to services they would have to endure. They were also concerned for safety and making sure that whatever operations were happening were done safely within the COVID restrictions. Stakeholders, our governmental partners, district partners, they cared about safety clearly. They wanted to know what our response was and that learning continued. Those were things that were important to them. Then students, we found, and I'm sure a lot of you found the same, our students were feeling vulnerable. They endured trauma, and school coming to our centers was an escape for them, and they weren't going to have that physical escape from some unhappy home lives. So that was something we wanted to address. And then parents wanted to be sure their students were safe and understand whether their kids could continue learning and what resources were available. That was a big part of our communication to parents, to reassure them and give them confidence with available resources from us and from the community. So all of that helped inform the content that we gave to our different audiences. So internally, everyone, we've heard that saying in airplanes that if the masks drop down, put the mask on yourself first and then help those around you. So we wanted to make sure that we were tight and concise in our internal communications before we started pushing out externally. That meant that encouraging employees to engage with us, to maintain their productivity and remain connected to our mission that we're all working here for these students. Also, maintaining engagement with students was our top priority, keeping them feeling cared for, supported, and that their learning could continue was critical. And then because we have so many schools across the state and every district was doing something different, we wanted to make sure that the communication was clear and consistent and concise internally so that employees understood exactly what was expected of them and what they had to do. A big key component of our internal communications was developing a work from home portal. We have a robust intranet system, but we decided to create this portal where everybody could go for a quick read on what is happening today related to remote learning, so they wouldn't have to dig and find. We included updates from critical departments, people and finance services, our communications department. We placed a lot of messaging and documents for external sharing so that teachers knew what they could use and share and say to their teachers, to their students and families. Our education department, all of those resources that we had for remote learning. Safety and facilities was big. Tech support, which was very critical because our help desk went from supporting 2,600 employees to now supporting an additional 23,000 students. So you can imagine the tech support that we had to ramp up. And so we used we placed a lot of content in here for that. And then health and wellness was something that was really highlighted during this because we needed to care for the emotional well-being of our employees, of our students, while we are trying to operationally support them as well. And we kept pushing out constant communication without overburdening or overwhelming our internal group. So we made sure that we did that in a concise way. One way was by highlighting new content on the portal. 2 or 3 times a week, depending on what content updates were made, we would send out a portal push, is what we called it. That just was a quick read to show what was the latest content and then links to highlight to the portal. Our CEO is great at setting the vision, reminding us of our mission. Every time the CEO sends out a message, we always received really good feedback. So he upped his communications to the team, our internal team, and at least twice a week we sent out messages from him that just reassured, and it was great to keep us all connected to our mission. And our wellness content really received the most engagement and feedback than any of our other content. So it was something that we knew was important to the team, and that based on the demand, the wellness team just kept churning out great content. And then with our house in order, with everyone internally clear on what the message was, what the operations were, then we could safely and efficiently communicate externally. So the first thing was we emphasized our schools never closed. Personalized learning is a resilient model, especially during times of crisis, and it's really great. It works well to serve students. We posted expert content. Our national superintendent is a leader in education, and she has great thoughts and ideas and commentary on issues related to personalized learning, equity for students, which was very important during the pandemic, trauma-informed care, which not enough people had been talking about, and then education reform. How can we come back better after this? Then students also wanted to have a voice, so we made sure to arm them with those emails, with communication tools, so they can directly speak to our legislators, their representatives. And we took that one-on-one contact that we normally had and made that virtual. Is there anything else to add there, Bob? Just want to make sure I got everything.
Nope, you got it.
Okay, great. So our content that we pushed out was consistent. Everything that we said internally was tailored for an external audience, and it was consistent across all of our channels. We maintained our learning report, which is our monthly newsletter of bite-sized content, and that included our content about COVID and what we were doing from the first issue that went out after lockdown, which was in April. Our social media also totally revamped to reinforce messages about pandemic and remote learning. This is for our students and our parents. We increased our board updates from monthly to weekly to make sure they were very clear on what we were doing, and we preempted any questions that they had, make sure they were fully informed. And all of our different websites, our different school websites, we had a banner across the top that showed the resources that are available, all of these critical COVID updates to make sure that families knew that the information they were receiving was the latest, most updated information. And we issued press releases. We upped our press release distribution. Normally we would do about 2 a month. We went up to 4 or 5 a month during some months of the pandemic. And that was because we had a lot of different story angles. We could tell our story through a lot of different points of entry that were relevant to what was happening across the country with the pandemic closings. And so here's just this example of various topics and angles that we pushed out through our press releases. And in that pitching and press release distribution, we generated tons of coverage, ranging from the Los Angeles Times and more mainstream media to our industry trades like EdSource, district administration, all reinforcing our message, our various messages and angles during the pandemic and how we were responding. A lot of it also was providing tips for other educators, for other districts, for teachers to think about during remote learning too, that we found was very helpful and was in high demand.
Yeah, prior to the end of the school year when graduations normally happen, we reached out to our elected officials to get congratulatory and inspirational messages for our graduates. So we were able to get the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, a number of state senators, state assembly members, local elected officials, the district attorney, on a regional basis to get messages out to our students, because our students were kind of gypped out of graduation because of the pandemic. And we wanted to make sure that they, all of their hard work was recognized, and we wanted to do something special for them. So we were able to get more than 65 different video messages from elected officials across the state, and we targeted them directly to where our students, the different regions where our students went, so they were getting messages from their local elected officials. In addition, Kevin McCarthy, the minority leader of the House, tweeted a word of encouragement to our students as well. So with us, learning never stopped. Our advertising and video content furthered our message that learning never stopped and kids continued learning. Here's a quick spot that we'd like to share with you.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Roxana. Thanks, Bob. I hope that you enjoyed that video. That video always, it's so inspiring. And we produced that to show that even in the midst of all of our obstacles that our students could still move forward, and they were still moving forward towards graduation. So we're really proud of that. But what I want to do now is talk about the power of consistency and show you, we've shown you some examples of how we applied a consistent message. And now we want to show you some tools so that you can apply it to your own organizations and help to inspire and strengthen your message as you move forward. So before every meeting, presentation, interview, testimony, it's important to consider your audience in crafting that message. And there are some few questions that you can ask yourself before you go into a meeting. What do they believe? What do we want them to believe? What are we trying to achieve? And then what do we want them to do? A move to action. You always want to think about what is, resonating in the minds of those that you're trying to speak to, and the message that you're going to craft. If you can be deliberate about asking and answering those questions, you can create very powerful talking points that will resonate and help your audience move to action. A message can be very powerful, and these are some of the building blocks to a message. And if it's well done, the basis for how you accomplish your organizational goals will be stronger. A message can influence someone's perception, which affects their belief and ultimately affects their performance. And I think all of us have had that goal set before us of trying to change somebody's perception of the way opportunity youth are perceived, or the way that our schools operate to serve those opportunity youth, and really trying to help them understand, to believe it, and then to act on that to support, whether through legislation, support of approval for authorization, enrollment of students. So there's all sorts of different ways that we're trying to change performance, and it all starts with the perception. Misaligned messaging. This slide is always really interesting to me because we all have lots of great things that we want to say and share. And sometimes there's so many good things that everybody's like a popcorn popping out different messages here and there. But if everything can be good, but if it's not a singular message, it can be confusing to the marketplace. And when there isn't consistency, if we're unclear, then our message is misunderstood. And sometimes we're confused as to why somebody isn't understanding all the good things that we're doing, but maybe it's because there's too many messages out there. An example is, actually we talked about it earlier, an example of misaligned messaging can be when during COVID, there were a lot of messages about school closure. We had school closure, distance learning, remote learning. We had lots of different messages out there, but we made a deliberate choice to talk about distance learning. We did not want to allude to the fact that our schools were closed in any way, that we weren't having one-on-one conversations with our students. So we chose to use the terminology distance learning, which alluded to the fact that we were still conducting learning, but it was in a distance and a safe environment, safe method. So now going on to consistent messaging, there is power in aligning your message, no matter who's saying it, whether it be your students, your staff, your board members, your partnerships. As an organization, if we're all speaking in a consistent voice, the audience will clearly understand the message, be able to repeat it, and that message will grow.
So now we've talked about the importance of what a message can do, the power of consistency. Now we're going to break it down and talk about how the process that we take to create a message, and it will provide some tools that maybe you can also replicate it so that your message resonates and it's easily repeatable, memorable, and powerful. So the first thing we do is we craft the pillars of our message. There's an overarching message, and it's what you do, why it matters, and what you want and need in order to do your work. And those are supported by 3 to 4 pillars usually. Those are kind of buckets about who you are and what you want to say that you can organize, that all prop up and support the overarching message. So an example of that we created for Learn for Life is that our success in serving at-promise students, helping them graduate, offering job skills training is vital to stronger communities and should be supported. This is a message that we created 6 years ago, I think, this overarching message, and it remains true. It is something we deliver on consistently. So that's the power of you have to get to the nut of really what you're trying to do, what you do and what you want, which is we want to be supported because of how important our work is. The 4 buckets that support that, the 4 pillars are, first, that we help students change their story. It's our at-promise student population. Our model is unique, personalized learning. A future beyond the diploma is something that we offer because of the job skills training and the lifelong learners that we create in our students. And our work helps the local community, and we show proof of that over and over again. So those are the 4 pillars that we always use to prop up our overarching message. And we make sure that we touch on each of these 4 pieces in every communication that we put out, whether it's a presentation, a reauthorization hearing, a press release, our newsletter, whatever it is, we make sure that we touch on these points. So the key to making a message stick, that's the rub. You know, you can say a lot of things, but if it doesn't stick and people don't carry it along with them, then you haven't accomplished anything. So consistency and reinforcing through overarching themes and telling a good story. So it's reinforcing, but not repetition. You know, it's not a script that you say verbatim. And the overarching themes, like we just talked about, help you to organize it, and it makes it more easy to grasp. And then that good story, illustrating what you're trying to say, that's the key to making people remember it. And here's how we use all of these guidelines to craft our message. So the message is made up of 3 things overall, a good message, let's say. First, it's the claim. Then it's the facts that support that claim. And then there's an illustrative example, that storytelling that makes it interesting, that makes it memorable. So here's an example. We're number 1. That's our claim. And the facts that support that we're number 1 is that we've won this award, this award, this award. A majority of our players hold state records. And here's a story. That one time, you know, remember that one time when we won the national championships with a backflip scissor kick goal, something really dramatic. So it was just a moment of time that we're talking about that illustrates our overall message. We're number 1 and reinforces with the facts that support that. So here's an example of how we do that. We organize it under our pillars for Learn for Life. So for our student, we serve at-promise students. We're here for students who are not succeeding in school. We recover at-risk students and help them earn a diploma for free. Facts that support that. Our average student enrolls more than a year behind in their education, and more than 86% are socioeconomically disadvantaged. And one story is Eunice, one of our former students, had severe anxiety and she was too shy to ask for help and began falling behind. At Learn for Life, the one-on-one attention was all that she needed. And she graduated and she earned an internship at the White House. So it wasn't for her lack of smarts. It was that she needed something different. All of us working with at-promise students have the benefit and advantage of having so many meaningful stories, student examples. Those are our strongest assets that we have to communicate what we're doing. So don't forget to always reinforce anything that you're saying with a snapshot, a student example, to really bring it home, create that emotional connection, and make it resonate. Oh, you're on mute, Anne.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
So we've talked to you about the importance of a consistent message and how to build it. And now we're going to give some tips on how to deliver it. We have a lot of spokespeople in our organization. We have our student ambassadors who are giving presentations, our community liaisons who are out delivering messages as well. So we want to make sure that the delivery, again, is consistent and that it's effective and believable. And so talking about some ways to do that, there are 3 parts to a believable communication. There's the verbal, what you say, the vocal, how you say it, and the visual, how you look and act. And it's not only, it's not only the message that's very important, and we're talking about that most definitely, but when you're out presenting, you want to think about all of these other elements as well, these 3 elements to support your communication. When we talk about communication, we want to remember that the soundbite is really a soundbite. The way that people receive information is, believe it or not, 9 seconds long, 140 characters, using strong words, verbs, present tense, an energetic delivery, and building in 3s always helps to reinforce that engagement or to draw engagement from your listener. For instance, today I want to talk to you about 3 things. The first is, and as you're going through the numbers, the listener is anticipating what number 2 and 3 are. So it's kind of a quick and easy little tip. But these are just really important as we're communicating, whether it be through email, if you're in a, speaking, you have a 15-minute meeting with a legislator, which, that happens quite often. And really it's 15 or 20 minutes, but they really only have really about 5 minutes to hear what you have to say. So you really want to make sure that you get your point across quickly, you reinforce it, and then you have your ask, and then you're done. So that's the soundbite. A little bit more on message delivery, some tips for how you say it. I know some of these are very commonplace, but we want to just reemphasize it, because even as we, as we prepare for the presentation, we have to remember that our speech needs to be clear, to enunciate, to use a tone of voice that is moderate to low. Think of the DJ voice. It has a warm feeling to it. Pausing for emphasis, giving yourself time to enunciate and speak the words that you want to say, but also giving time to receive, some feedback. Vary your pace, and then use the appropriate enthusiasm. I know that this is, again, things that we know, but it's always a good reminder, even if you are presenting often. Another good reminder is your body language. I love this because, I love rules that help me remember things, but this one, the 738-55 rule, I wish the percentages were a little different, but 7%, more important than your tone or delivery is your body language. And again, this is for if you're making a presentation, you can't help it if you're sending an email, but as we're even on Zoom, it's important to remember that your eye contact, things of that nature are important, but ultimately your body language is more important than even your words or your tone. So if you can remember the 738-55 rule. So speaking of body language, we want to just review some good body language and some not so good body language. This is mostly a reminder, but it goes a long way to keeping your audience engaged. Having a tall posture, solid eye contact, deliberate gestures, leaning forward, tilting your head, hands on your desk, all of those things that we know. And we can see it a lot in our students when they're in their class, when they're sitting in their seats at our learning centers. You can tell when a teacher is engaged with their student. And so those things hold true even as we're delivering a message, whether it's a one-on-one message or in a meeting with your board members. Language that we want to stay away from is those that communicate a lack of power, a lack of confidence, discomfort, or defensiveness. And I think we all have experienced that in some way or another, when somebody turns away or they don't look at you, they have averted eyes, or they're don't have many facial expressions. So all of those things make a difference in the way that you're conveying a message. So just a quick summary of what we wanted to help apply to your presentations. Remember to always consider your audience. That's who you're speaking to. Think about what they're thinking of and what you want to get out of the conversation. Understand the parameters. If they have a limited time, you want to be very cognizant of that. Get to your point quickly. The faster you get to your point, you can leave lots of room for a Q&A, but get to your point and get that out in the beginning. Communicate your vision. A lot of times in meetings, you know, people will walk away thinking, what was that meeting about? So be clear to communicate your vision right away. Leave some space for their reactions. Some people are a little bit slower to react, and you want to leave room for that, for them to be able to ask a question. Color things with detail. This kind of goes back to what Roxana was saying. And when you have something to share, color it with detail. With a student story, we have so many great illustrations. Always remember to add those in and make it personable. And end with your vision. All of these things can help you be a better communicator. Speaking of communication, again, we have a little trick to communication. Your teams probably spend a lot of time trying to produce your message and get your message out. And one way to maximize that message is by sharing your content across multiple medium. And we try to always do this. We have, we'll distribute our press releases, which are earned. We'll distribute our press releases. And then hopefully we get some great articles off of it. So that would be an earned piece. We try to use that same messaging in any advertising, which is our paid. We always post something up on our social, which is our shared. And then we have newsletters and several newsletters that we have actually. And all of those together build power in the message that makes those messages memorable. It reinforces those messages and it's consistent. So again, whatever content you have, just think about all the different channels that you can share it across and make the most out of it. And some examples of that, or one example that I wanted to share through COVID was our Build Back Better. Our thought leader is wonderful, as Roxana was saying. And so we developed a, we worked with her to develop a really great op-ed. We turned it into a press release. We shared it out. We put it in our, we got some press off of it. Education Post picked it up. That was an earned piece. We got some great SEO off of it. We put it in our newsletter, the Learning Report. We put it on our website. And then we made sure that we sent it to the board. We have a external piece that we send out so that that newsletter was received to our board members and a lot of our like-minded organizations and people that we've met along the way. So we took a piece of content and distributed it probably 5 or 6 different ways and just really reinforced that message. And we got a lot of great value out of that. So you can do the same thing with your messages as well.
So to recap, what we shared with you today is the power of a message consistency in responding to a crisis situation. The deliberate process to create your message before every interaction, tips for effective communication, and maximizing your content and channels. We hope this information was helpful and you will benefit from these tools and tips as you navigate your roles in supporting At Promise You. So we have time for questions. I think Roxana is.
Yes, I'm here with the iPad. So we've got a couple of comments. Ernie, thank you. He said that about the video, he said strong message without a spoken word. So that was great. Thank you. And then you guys do a great job of that. It's important that we all recognize we have those stories. We just need to learn how to communicate them. So those student stories that those are our best, those are arrows in our quiver that we can use to help forward our message and bring it to life, make it connect emotionally, make it resonate, and make people remember what you're about. So I'll stop sharing my screen so we can see our faces. Okay. Great. Great. I don't think we have any questions yet coming through. Thank you all for joining. Hi, Unitra. Unitra said good morning, and Lorna Fast Horse said good morning. Great.
Well, thanks for listening in. And if you have any questions after the fact, feel free to reach out to any of us. We'd be happy to provide you with some information. If you'd like to get on our mailing list so you can see some of these newsletters and editorials and other pieces that we put out, we'd be happy to share them with you. We hope this was helpful, and we hope to be able to continue to support what each other does, because that's really the only way we're going to be able to benefit these opportunity youth that we strive so hard to help assist.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your weekend and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Bob and Roxana and Ann. That was wonderful. Thank you for participants for joining us. I just want to remind you to please visit the sponsor exhibit booths at lunchtime. Don't forget to complete your session feedback. And our next session in the Building Promise during COVID-19 will be Models of Success in Distance Learning from Tricia Bloom and Ramona Bishop. So enjoy the break and see you back in this room at 10:15. Thanks, Learning for Life. That was great.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.